Hi, everyone. I'm Wayne Cunningham from the SWE Foundation, and welcome to our X Space. Today, we're discussing how SWE enables decentralized physical infrastructure, most notably how it enables mobile phone services. We tend to think of mobile service providers as massive companies that often don't answer to the needs of users. In some areas, they face minimal competition or even operate monopolies. Can blockchain's promise of decentralization extend to mobile phone services? Joining me today are Andrew Alifi, Nahid Azad, and potentially Andrew Buchanan, although we've been having some issues getting him on board, all from Karrier One to talk about how their service works and what the promises of SWE decentralization and mobile phone services. So let's get this started. Andrew Alifi, do you want to give a brief intro about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Andrew Alifi. I'm the CEO for Karrier One. And my day-to-day operations has been looking at the radio deployments as well as anything to do with operations. My background has been in computer engineering. I've been in crypto space since 2010. And so notably been doing a whole bunch of stuff in the space. And this is one of the projects that I'm super excited to be part of.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And let's go to Nahid Massa. Do you want to tell us a little about yourself and your role at Karrier One?
Yeah, hey, so I'm CSO at Karrier One. I have a background in computer science. Been involved in the crypto space since around 2016. Worked on a few token NFT projects and got involved with Karrier One around 2022. Saw the big potential in DePIN and DeWi, so I've just been kind of full force focus on Karrier One. Some of my day-to-day roles, I kind of oversee a lot of the crypto side and Web3 operations, helping along with that tokenomics and design of the crypto network. Recently seen a little bit overview of the marketing with our big spike in SWE people and our partnership with SWE. But yeah, mainly just overview on the crypto side of things.
Great. Thank you, Nahid. Let's get into the questions, get into it. So as a decentralized mobile phone service, Andrew Alifi, how does Karrier One work?
Yeah, so Karrier One is an orchestration platform that we see enabling worldwide telecom and anything in telecom and wireless. So for us, it's overseen by our Karrier DAO, which manages both KNS, which is our carrier number system, and also our radio deployments. Now, the platform allows users to receive an eSIM, which is enabled phone plan, and they're able to utilize that to utilize our network through radios that we call gatekeepers. Now, we offer a full circle solution regarding connectivity to underserved communities and also highly dense populated areas. And we are looking at new ways for telephony. So the carrier number system, which is our flagship system, is for assigning numbers and providing SIM swap protection, and as well as enabling SWE transactions based on phone numbers. Now, what we do is we believe in the moving forward of Web3 by enabling Web2 users to sign up with their phone numbers. And these phone numbers help create a wallet and us actually help utilize the wallet by allowing users to send and receive SWE and also interact with our entire network.
And Andrew, can you go a little bit into how Karrier One connects with the global phone services, how I can call somebody from a Karrier One phone to a phone on any other network?
Yeah, so from what we have currently so far is we actually have a whole entire system in the back end. So the whole system that we have is carrier-grade telecom equipment. And this equipment allows users to make phone calls similar to how they would, both either on the KNS or using an eSIM. So as long as they pop in an eSIM into their phone, or if they have the KNS number, they can utilize it through our app or through the eSIM, and it will just dial as a regular phone call like you would have with your current cell phone provider.
Great, thanks. And I want to get into eSIMs a little bit later in this conversation, but right now I'd like to go to Nahid to give you a chance to talk. And Andrew mentioned something about connecting in underserved communities. So can you talk to that a little bit about how Karrier One can enable that?
Yeah, so one of our biggest primary focuses right off the bat has been giving connectivity or better connection to these rural and indigenous communities, because we find they're really underserved with traditional telco companies. So by partnering with a lot these rural or indigenous communities, they're willing to actually are more than happily to pay for the radio connection, just as long as it means getting connectivity to their communities where the telcos, it's not profitable enough for them to go and install connectivity to these areas. So with our solution, we've kind of built a middle ground where we work with these telcos to provide us the spectrum and the roaming agreements to be able to sell the hardware to these rural and indigenous communities and allow them to install it and either give themselves connectivity or better connectivity, where in the other case, they wouldn't have that, or the telco companies are not going to do it for a long time or just completely going to avoid them. And we do find it's a relatively large market size to kind of be approaching. So 1/3 of the world is currently unconnected or has very bad connectivity or no connectivity at all. So we found it was a really good target market to start off with, but we do plan also to launch out into more urban areas and more dead zone areas or areas where other telco providers have just been lacking.
Thanks, Nahid. And can you comment a little bit about, are there any particular regions or areas that you're looking at right now?
Yeah, so we're actually in talks with a lot of the native reserves, and one of the areas where they're really interested in is Alaska, actually. So there's a few different native reserve tribes up in Alaska that actually own all the spectrum up there, and they're looking to kind of work with a partner similar to us and get a solution up and running. So we're looking to actually get a new POC up there with one of the bigger tribes.
Great, thank you. And back to you, Andrew. I'd like to get a better understanding of how SWE plays a part in Karrier One's network.
Yeah, so we're thrilled to be working with SWE. From a technical point of view, SWE is very modern. It has very fast transactions, they almost settle in sub-milliseconds. Cheap gas fees. The use of the Move language has been very easy for us to develop some of our contracts. And there's a whole lot built into it. So on the business side of things, we found common goals and growth and opportunities right away with SWE. We both were looking into the same thing of bridging Web 2 to Web 3, because from a telecom side, most people don't care about, Web 3 when it comes to their phones, right? And quite frankly, we want to be able to enable those users to use cell phone plans within Web 3 world, right? So some of that is the seamless sign-on and identity solutions that are offered from SWE. And then the other thing is Karrier One is working on enabling phone number-based sign-ons. And with that phone number-based sign-on, you'll be able to generate a wallet, be able to onboard to SWE and through Web3 on our ecosystem. And you'll be able to map a phone number to your actual wallet. And that will enable you to have almost similar to the SWE name service. And so you'll be able to map that, use that towards getting transactions or sending transactions using phone numbers. And that's a big major goal, is bringing those Web 2 users. Now, working with SWE has been a pleasure for both of us, and we look forward to growing the ecosystem with SWE.
Thanks, Ed. And that's a great point about integrating with SWE-NS. I think there's a lot of potential there. One thing, could you comment a little bit about when somebody sets up an account on Karrier One, like a user, will that be an account based on the SWE network?
Yes, that's correct. So we're going to have both the option for custodial and the non-custodial portion of it. Now, with the SWE, the ZK login allows us to have a person create a wallet using the phone number. So that makes it so much more easier and so much more simpler. And everything can be based on the Web3 address that the user creates. And so that's why it's super important to work with the ZK login stuff.
Great. And Nahid, I want to go to you to talk about, you mentioned radios, and I suppose those are nodes on the network. How does somebody become part of that? How does somebody set up a node on Karrier One?
Okay, so currently we have in our current white paper foundational nodes, gatekeeper nodes, operator nodes, but we're currently in the middle of updating the white paper and the tokenomics, so that might have confused a few people on the foundational node side of things, because now we're kind of using SWE as our main platform, since they're able to provide everything we've needed that other chains haven't been able to. In order to become a gatekeeper node, even though it's not fully released yet, we're kind of looking at like a new system where we actually have like deployers acting as similar to validators on SWE network. And it'll be kind of like more of like a delegated proof of stake system. And in this way, we found there's a lot of deployers out in North America and Canada that are willing to install these carrier grade networks, similar to how they've been doing it on Helium. And they're looking to actually do it in a more professional carrier grade manner. So that's actually something that we're looking to kind of implement, where it's not going to necessarily be just one person installing a radio on their house where it's in the middle of nowhere or they're not able to maintain it. We're looking for like a little bit more of a professional deployment manner where people are actually going to maintain it and properly deploy the radios. So that would entitle you to become a deployer node on the network, where you'll install these radios and earn based on usage and tokens, and other people will actually be able to delegate to these deployers and earn based on how they're deploying the radio, and kind of like vote on different areas where we need to provide connectivity and install regions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have specifications for somebody as far as what bandwidth they can offer and power, uninterruptible power supply for these radios?
Yeah, so it ranges from different types of radios and different types of specs on how high the radio has to be or how much connectivity. We are planning on releasing all that information very soon. So if people keep up with the project, they'll notice in the next few weeks, hopefully we'll have all that updated on the website.
Great. Thanks, Nahid. And I want to take it to the user side. Andrew, can you talk about how someone gets phone service through Karrier One?
Yeah. So with the phone service for Karrier One, we're looking to be a mobile network enabler. So what does that mean? It means that we work with deployers and existing mobile providers to expand coverage. Now, this creates two different approaches to offering the cellular service. So with your existing plan and carrier, if Karrier One has a bilateral roaming agreement in place, which means we roam both ways, you could take advantage of Karrier One's network without ever having to do anything. So if you are currently with a different cell phone provider and you want to make a call and you're in our area and your cell phone provider is not in our area, they'll roam on our network. And so that makes it seamless, right? So at the end of the day, we have some proof of concepts for leveraging this arrangement today, where roaming customers are connected to Karrier One radios without having to do anything special on their end. And we have about thousands of different users that are roaming currently on our POCs today. And that number keeps growing as we get more roaming and bilateral roaming agreements. So we are rolling out the KNS number system, which is called Carrier Number System. And as part of that, we are offering a variety of different phone and SMS and cellular services. Now, those include fully enabled primary phone services, as well as secondary.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
And forwarding services. So we plan on having a mix of different use cases, like, first of all, cellular services like most of us have today, or we're also looking at secondary, which might be social accounts, video games. You might want an inexpensive forwarding number, and you might even want a number that you could just throw away for whatever reason, right? And then that's where the privacy reasons will come into play. So you might not want to give out your phone number. You might want a secondary eSIM on your phone. You might want to go roaming in different countries. These are some of the use cases for having a phone number.
Yeah, those are really fascinating. And I was curious too, will users have 5G bandwidth? And going forward with new generations, could you do software upgrades to those radios?
Yeah, so our network is capable of doing 3G, 4G, and 5G. It really depends on where the spectrum is and what spectrum we have in those current areas, because we're looking to launch in many different jurisdictions, US or Canada, or even anywhere in the world. And so it really is up to the spectrum, and it's really up to the radios that are provided in those regions.
And so I imagine with each one, you have to deal with government regulation as far as the spectrum is available.
Yeah. So in terms of the government regulations, we have a full understanding in Canada, US, and in some of the different jurisdictions around the world. Our CEO, Samer Bichet, has had 25 years of experience in telecom. having run one of the large CLECs in Canada. And so that's given us a huge perspective on regulation.
Great. And I think we've kind of touched on this already, but it seems like your market reach is kind of potentially all around the world.
Yeah. So our market reach has been like, if you look at connectivity, there's over 1/3 of the world that's not connected. As Naheed was saying in the first part, when it comes down to connectivity, we have 1/3 potential to reach out. And so that means we can go to remote communities. We can have deployers install these radios and connect the digital divide, as we call it. Now, we could start rolling out in these less connected communities, but that's not the only revenue stream for us. So for us, what we're looking at is the bilateral roaming agreements that some other telecoms are looking at, especially when you look at densification. Now, densification means highly densely populated areas. So those are malls, those are underground garages, those are campuses, and there's like a big problem that the MNOs are trying to solve today. And of that big problem, they're looking at how do we fix those issues. So if you're downtown metropolitan, Manhattan City in New York, there's a lot of dead spots that are underground or a lot of dead spots in buildings. And it's not easy for the telecom giants like, AT&T or T-Mobile to be able to put their radios in those buildings. And it might be just up to the landlord. So a lot of the landlords can now purchase these radios, put them in, and earn income from those radios specifically. And those are what we call femtocells. And that's the biggest thing that I think at the end of the day, it's giving us a clear picture of creating these roaming agreements and adding more. And then to top it off, our POCs that we have deployed so far have been showing huge, tremendous support in terms of the number of people that are trying to connect to it, as well as we're seeing some of the MNOs that are attempting to roam on us, but we don't have a roaming agreement with them yet. And it could be, roaming from China coming into Canada. And we can literally take that and create a roaming agreement.
Technical difficulties. Sorry about that, everybody. But Andrew, if you want to go on.
Yeah. So I guess you want me to start from the top, or should I?
Oh, I think we got what you were talking about is fascinating. If you had any follow up on that. One thing I'm interested in is the potential for a building or business to offer this service as a differentiator, that they could say, oh, you can get this service. Would normally be a dead spot or normally only be serviced by one particular telco from our location.
Yeah. So those telcos, they don't necessarily get access to everywhere, right? So they have to find a place, they have to go rent it, they have to go and put fiber into the area just to be able to service a radio in that region. And they might have access throughout, and it's always up to, access, right? So at the end of the day, if a telco wants to put in a building, they have to ask the landlord, they have to get all the special permission. So there are some instances where landlords can get these radios, install them into their buildings or install them into underground garages and be able to earn income from just that alone.
Great. Okay. And I want to move on because we do have some questions, pre-submitted questions, community questions. And Naheed, I'll point most of these at you. And Andrew, if you want to jump in on these too, that's good. Let's start off with Karrier One is what we call a DePIN, which is decentralized physical infrastructure, and DeWi, decentralized wireless. So, Naheed, can you talk about the difference between Karrier One and other DeWi projects?
Yeah. So one of the main differences right off the bat is we're strictly focused on carrier grade infrastructure. So a lot of these other DeWi projects have been just focused on kind of selling a cheaper hardware just to kind of like build out the network or to just have people buying into their radios and installing them, and not so much focused on all the requirements needed to keep a radio upkeep and properly maintained. So one of the main reasons for us going with that approach is we're really interested on kind of like bridging that digital divide between telco and Web3. And none of the telecom providers are really interested in using the current radios out there. So just to give an idea with like, for example, Helium, even though they've got that whole agreement with T-Mobile and they're now selling plans as like an MVNO, it's not like T-Mobile is using their radios or they're interested in using their radios because they're not willing to take that risk. So that's been a big focus of ours, to just really push out carrier grade infrastructures, and kind of like touching back on the point of how we're looking at working with like a bunch of different deployers to properly install these networks. Another point too is right off the bat, we're not focused on just becoming an MVNO or MNO. We're actually looking to become a mobile virtual network enabler. So that involves working with like all different types of telcos to have them actually using our equipment and actually driving usage and revenue to our radios, opposed to just installing a radio that's never going to be used or used very minimally. And then eventually we plan to expand the network to offer those other services like mobile plans and other mobile services that will then in turn be used back and forth between us and other telecom providers.
Great. And when we're talking about these different nodes, the radios themselves and the people that set them up, I understand. So there's going to be a token that compensates those users similar to a validator on the SWE network?
Yeah. So we're going to have kind of like a 2-tier approach to how deployers will get paid out. So one of them will be just strictly based on usage, and the other would be similar to how any other crypto node will get paid out nowadays. So it'll be based on some sort of like algorithm or some sort of rate defined by the carrier DAO that will reward them and kind of like incentivize those radio deployments. As the network grows, we are hoping that with that equilibrium effect, eventually the radios will start earning more based on the usage and a lot less based on the incentives from the network, eventually until they're earning all based on usage or very minimally from the network effect. So the token is mainly used primarily in that sense at first to really drive these deployers and drive these deployments or installations of the radios on the network. And then eventually, as what they're self-sufficient, it'll be mainly based on the fees that they get from actual usage.
Great. And I've got another question about the handsets. Will Karrier One have its own smartphone, or what smartphones? You mentioned eSIMs, of course, so I assume any smartphone that can use an eSIM will work.
Yeah. So we got a lot of questions about the SWE phone, and as much of it we want to entertain the SWE phone, it's not on our short-term roadmap. We are hoping eventually, once we get big enough and hopefully as we grow with SWE, that is something that we could potentially entertain. In the terms of short-term, it's not really on there. And then, yeah, just to touch up on the point with like the eSIM, almost any phone nowadays works with an eSIM, so anyone will be able to use the network as long as their phone is compatible with eSIMs.
Okay. And next question I have here is, when will the network be up and running? When will there be active users on it? And how many users do you expect to have it once it's active during its first year?
Okay. So on that point, there's a few different parts of the network. So one would be the carrier number system, which we're looking to launch before we actually get retail radio deployments going. The main reason for that is we're really trying to reach out to the whole Web3 and crypto community. And a lot of these other DeWi projects are kind of region locked with their radio deployments and cell phone plans. The approach we're taking with KNS isn't really region locked. Anyone will be able to get a KNS number and Web3 number and connect it to SWE and start using it for transactions, verification, or SIM swap protection. So in that sense, we're hoping to get that system out around Q2, Q3, depending if everything goes well with development. In terms of radio deployments, we're hoping to get it done after our actual token launch, which again, I'd say is probably like Q2, Q3. And then in terms of networks on the user, it's a little bit different in terms of metrics. Like Andrew touched up on it a little earlier. Currently, we already have some POCs running just to kind of like proof of concept that other carriers will roam off our radios and network users will actually connect to our radios and generate revenue. And we already have seen like tens of thousands of mobile users and devices connecting to our radios and the small amount of POCs that we have. So we're actually projecting like once we get in more serious with the US market, which we've just started entering within the last month, and we have a few proofs of concepts with the players that we're setting up right now, to see those numbers increase to like the hundreds of thousands, to be honest, in terms of other networks and devices and roaming agreements connecting on our network. In terms of mobile plans, we haven't really set projections yet, but we do think if we do it right, we could see a fair bit of amount by the end of the year, hopefully.
And will you be publishing a connectivity map on your site to let people know where they can connect?
So that is, right now we do have an Explorer, just a basic one showing which radios we have connected on to our network in Canada. And we do plan to expand that more just to give people an idea of like where we're going to be deploying radios, or like you just touched up on, where they can connect to it, or areas that are looking more profitable and whatnot. And we plan to really expand that to include a lot of different features as we grow the network.
Great, thanks. And here's a final interesting question here, community question concerning leveraging end user devices. Can a smartphone actually be a node on the network in any way?
So not necessarily a node on the network, but we have already looked into, and we are planning on kind of leveraging those to help map out areas where it is bad connectivity, or the connectivity could be better, or there is no connectivity at all. So eventually we do plan to release some sort of app that will reward users for pointing that out and kind of like helping to fill in the gap where radios could be installed and be generating revenue. And people will be able to earn off of that, but they won't necessarily be a node on the network, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. So what we're talking about is the phones become sort of a probe and give you feedback to when they're not connected or when they're experiencing different maybe levels of connectivity. That's very interesting. We're getting to time here, so let me go back to Andrew for any final thoughts on Karrier One and DePIN.
Yeah, so we really are trying to push towards a whole global connectivity across the globe. We really think that we can bridge the digital divide that currently exists. And we do believe at the end of the day, what we're doing will actually help out in terms of moving our entire economy forward and so forth, in terms of, internet connectivity and so forth.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And Naheed, any final thoughts?
Honestly, we're really bullish on with SWE and Karrier One. I do feel that in terms of what SWE is offering, no other blockchain is really going to be able to fulfill what we're doing. And I do feel that the potential for growth with both of them is going to be huge, and we're expecting to really help bridge like that digital divide between Web3 and SWE at the end of the day. And I think both parties have a really good vision and are aligned in getting that done.
Great, thank you. There's so much potential here for taking Web3 to the real world, making real world impact. I'm always excited by these ideas and projects. So thank you very much for joining, Andrew and Naheed, and thank everybody for listening. Stay tuned to our Twitter feed, where we will have another space scheduled for next Thursday, and join us again and stay tuned for more content.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yep, thank you.